Welcome back to Leveraging Leadership, where we unpack the art of business leadership. I'm your host, Emily Sander, Chief of Staff turned Executive Leadership Coach. This show is all about finding your points of greatest influence and leveraging them to better serve those around you. And our guest today is Mel Mathews. Mel, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you for being on. Can you just kick us off with a brief introduction, little background info on who you are and how you got to your Chief of Staff role?
Sure. So I consider myself an operations leader by nature. I have a passion for innovation and problem solving. My career journey has been mostly focused on driving performance improvements, delivering growth through strategic planning, cross-functional leadership, etc. Prior to being a chief of staff, I actually led a transformative business process initiative at my previous company, which is IntelliCare. They are a tech-enabled nurse staffing company, startup stages still. I revitalized our product development practices. I led global project delivery. And prior to being promoted into that role, I also built and led a global team of sales, customer service representatives to achieve, it was about 365% growth in 2021 alone. So yeah, we were busy for sure. So I was the director of market development operations for a few years over there. So total 5 years there. And then was ready for my next step and was brought on to Performance Architects as their chief of staff.
Beautiful. It sounds like a perfect training ground and lead up to a chief of staff role.
Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful. Tell us a little bit about the company you're in and the structure, kind of your principals, the executive team, the rest of the org, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, of course. So Performance Architects, we are an IT consulting firm. Primarily, we focus on the higher education space, as well as, some commercial clients, but pharma and healthcare. And we are an Oracle Platinum partner, as well as Snowflake and Tableau. And, we have a bunch of other partnerships that we work on, both on the enterprise performance management side, as well as the business analytics side. And we are not a super hierarchical type of organization where, if you just join and you're a junior folk, you can't speak to the CEO. We're somewhat flat where our co-founders, they're available anytime. They work with our junior consultants. And so the executive team is made up of Mark and Ken, who are co-founders and principals, and as well as 3 vice presidents who help to lead the business practices. A managing director, of whom I work very close with to lead up the day-to-day business operations of the organization, and then myself. And then we have, senior leadership team that's comprised of directors, consulting directors, and then our consulting staff.
Very cool. Okay. And how many people company-wide?
Just over 60. So we have over 50 here in the States and about 10 to 11 in our India office.
Okay. And did you say you have 2 principals? Or do you mostly work with one? Okay, both.
I work with both. Yep. So I work with both very closely. The CEO and the COO. And, one of the reasons they brought me on was because they were getting to the point where they're too large to run the day-to-day, right? And to be able to stay focused on growth and do the things that they're passionate about, which is working with their clients and coding and doing project implementations and migrations. Those are the things they like to do. They're not really focused on revenue generation and marketing and, talent acquisition and all the other things that go into the day-to-day. So that's why they brought me on.
Okay. And so what's your interaction with them? Are they off doing their thing and they've said, Mel, you have the keys to the kingdom, go keep the trains on time? Or are you in pretty close contact with them?
Yes. So, they brought me on and they definitely just gave me the kind of power and autonomy to go and do what I needed to do. And they were, trusting in me that I had the expertise to do the things that they hired me to do. So we meet weekly, right? We talk, we use G Suite. So we're always on chat and we chat all the time throughout the week, but we have, more of a formal catch up meeting once a week. We're the three of us. And sometimes we bring in our managing director to discuss other things if we need to just make the most use of the time that we already have scheduled. And, we know what our goals are for the year, strategically where, what we need to be working on. And so I have a plan basically for the year of what I need to do in order to achieve those goals. And, they trust me enough to just do it, check in once a week, see how things are going, and you go from there.
I love that. Number one, you have a yearly strategy and you're executing. Because a lot of people are like, yearly strategy, I don't know what I'm doing next week. So that's awesome.
Yeah,
and then it's amazing that they give you the autonomy to go and do what you do. And that, like, look,
micromanage, which is fantastic. I don't like to be micromanaged. It gives me anxiety. It makes you doubt yourself. Are you doing your job well enough? And I also don't like to micromanage either. So I historically have always built teams that report to me of solid folks that can really work independently and don't need that constant guidance or the constant redirection. They just, I try to put on plans in place so that everyone knows what they're working towards. And then there's less, you need less guidance if you know exactly what you need to do on a day-to-day basis.
I think in any leadership role, but especially as chief of staff, you spend a lot of time getting the right person in the right seat and then let them go. Like, answer their questions, train them up, of course, but then let them do their job and they're going to be better at things than you are. So just let them go. But that's interesting. So you mentioned the co-founders brought you on because they were kind of at a tipping point. And I don't know how many people were there when you came on, but they self-identified, hey, we need someone like chief of staff or someone to run the operations piece. Was there anything else that was going on that inspired the chief of staff hire? Or was it like, nope, we've reached this point. We need someone like this in our organization?
Yes. So the funny story is I was actually at Performance Architects in a previous life. So I ran sales and marketing, over 5 years ago. And I was with the company for 6.5 years. So there was a lot of trust that was already developed there, which I think has led them to be able to say, Mel, you go do your thing because we trust you. I'm here in a very different capacity than I was when I was here the first time. And had I not left and gained all of the great experience that I had at IntelliCare, then I wouldn't have come. I don't know that I would have come back in the same way. They definitely did reach a little bit of an inflection point or that tipping point where their senior leadership and the exec team kind of hollering a little bit. And, we need help. We need to be able to, have someone who handles people operations, have someone who handles the business operations, who, really works on our resource management and staffing and planning and the hiring strategy and the talent acquisition and all of that. Because really it was, Mark and Ken, and then the support of, a couple of folks that report to me or whatever, and the leadership team doing a little bit of everything. And to be able to focus and grow the way that they wanted to, they needed to have someone more dedicated.
And you've mentioned the managing director a couple of times. Just to play, what role is that fulfilling?
Yeah, so Jeff plays the role. His previous title was head of sales in marketing. Okay. And so he's really focused on how do we grow these two business practices, right? How are we leading? How are we going to continue our partnership advancements? How are we going to, acquire new customers? Yeah. And where our strategic direction is going to go. We have a really we have a large EPM practice. Our analytics practice is also large, but not quite as large. So it's like we want to build that practice up. And if so, then what are the sectors that we're going to go into? So him and I work together closely where he's really focused on growth and revenue acquisition. And then we work together to put the plans in place, and then we can execute on those plans.
You execute to it. Yes. Okay. So it makes sense. You work pretty hand in hand with the managing director.
Yes, absolutely.
So, interesting. So you worked for the company before. You went off and got some great experience elsewhere. Yeah. and they came back in a very different capacity.
Yes.
So I'm curious, how did they position you and your role when you came back?
So what ended up happening was, when I was starting to look for a new position and I had, had my moments, my time where I was like, all right, I could go two paths really. I could go head of operations, which is what I was really looking to do, or chief of staff, because it's depending on the company, it's one and the same. So I had a networking call with them and I just said, hey guys, I haven't seen you in forever. That this is what I'm doing now. And this is what I've done in the last 5 years that we haven't worked together. And this is what I'm looking to do. These are the types of companies I want to go into. So we just had like a virtual coffee date. And, they're like, all right, we'll keep you posted. Couple of months go by and they were like, Ken reached out to me and said, hey Mel, can we chat? I want to pitch something to you. So we got on the phone and he was like, listen, we're looking to hire, he gave me the backstory, right? That they're getting to the point where that they really, really need to bring someone on. And they asked me, what I thought about this position and what they really need help with. And I said, it sounded great. And, we went back and forth, but it took a while, right? It took a couple of months for us to get to the point where I think we were both of us were satisfied financially, what the package was like, and luckily I had the time. So, but it took a little bit of time till we could come to an agreement on exactly what that looked like. But then I came back and it's been great. And I'm so happy with my decision.
That's awesome. And I think there's a couple different lessons for the listener, which is keep in touch with your previous bosses. I mean, don't burn bridges, but
never.
Where it can lead.
Absolutely. I have, my reference sheet is now that I've been doing this for, I'm not going to say how many years because I'm not going to myself, but I have, my reference sheet is very long and there's someone from every company, right? That's one of the things I will say is that, no matter how things go down within your place of employment, whether it's positive, negative, you leave, you're let go, whatever it may be, you always want to make sure that you leave on a good note and that you don't build those bridges because you never know when you'll cross paths in the future, right? I actually remember the time, small story, remember the time where I had someone on my team and they were just, they were a junior, they just had graduated from college a year or two, junior rep, and they quit one day. They were with me for maybe 6 months and one day they quit sight unseen. Like, I'm giving my notice effective today, which is really kind of, that's not great. It's not professional. It puts me in a negative position because now I have to backfill your spot and I'm already behind the ball. Fast forward maybe 6 months and he's selling software at a company and reaches out to me because he knows that where I'm working. So he knows I could probably use this software. And I told him, frankly, we got on a call and I said, I just want to remind you of how you left our company and what position you left me in. I get that, you have to put yourself first, but now we're in a position where I'm not going to buy your software.
Wow. Yeah.
And I said, but I wish nothing, no ill regard to it at all, no ill will, nothing. But I don't need it really. I'm doing okay without it. And if I do need it, it's going to be you I call.
Yeah, straight up. I mean, people remember how
they
you
do.
What position you put them in.
Right. And you always leave an impact, no matter how large or small. You always leave an impact in everyone's lives that you work with, that you work for. And, not every day is unicorns and glitter, but you can still be the best version of yourself and, maintain those relationships once you leave, always.
And I think that's important on the other side too. So as chief of staff, I was on point for recruiting and hiring.
Mm-hmm.
And when we would decline someone, the way I did that was just as important as when we
100%.
because you don't
100%.
know if they're going to be back for another role. You want to keep them in your Rolodex, so to speak. And
100%.
you're an ambassador to the company. And especially if someone was a finalist, I would call them, first of all. Some people
Yeah.
do it with email or text, or I don't know what that's about, and give them a full debrief of here's why we
And
made
feedback.
that.
And
Yes.
feedback. Yes,
And
absolutely.
people, I mean, they were disappointed in the decision, but they respected that we took the time to do that. And they really found it helpful. I thank you for the feedback. Because if people do the boilerplate email, like, oh, we went in a different direction, they're like, well, why and what and how?
Right.
But
Exactly. Yes.
I've done
Give
that.
you
And
this
then
kind of finalists, I call them. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's
so
so important. That's a great point.
it is. So you're an ambassador to the company in which direction you go.
100%.
So it seems like you have a really good setup with your principals and with the managing director, and it seems pretty seamless. You just came in there, they knew you before. Sidebar, that's another reason to not burn bridges, especially as chief of staff, because if you have that trust built up, that is a huge advantage for you if you're
Huge.
coming back in a chief of
Right.
staff role. But it seems like you just kind of slid in there and it was a smooth glide path. But
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about how you got acclimated and introduced to the company as chief of staff.
Sure. So, yes, I definitely, it felt as though almost no time had passed, which is very strange, right? It was over 5 years. But the best part is that there were still familiar faces here. It wasn't just Mark and Ken. There was, the leadership team was almost the same, right? They had grown. The managing director was new to me, but there were still a lot of familiar faces, which made it easy to transition back into the company. And I think that I'm very adaptable and agile. I'm self-taught in a lot of different areas of things that different tools that I use, just things that some areas of expertise I would consider, kind of just not self-taught, but you learn as you go. And so when I came back, it was really just like, all right, what are the main problems? I sat down with most of the company on one-on-ones. I had a lot of one-on-ones with our new consultants that had been here that I knew of. I asked questions. I tried to just observe for about 30 days, right? And that's kind of a rule for me in any new role that I take on. I need to observe. I need to see what's happening. I need to make my own opinions, and really just understand what's happening, and observe from afar. And that's I often find that's the best way to get a good picture of what's going on within a company or a department. So spent about 30 days observing, meeting with folks, identifying areas, taking lots of notes and identifying areas that I was seeing that were of weakness. And got acclimated to the new products that we're using. We're using Smart Sheets and Harvest and, forecast resource management, a bunch of new tools that I hadn't used, or it had been years since I used. Set myself up with my Asana project management, really I just hit the ground running. The first major thing there were two major projects that I completed like within 60 days of being on board, but one of them was an engagement survey, and I sent it out to the entire company, and it was anonymous, and I wanted to get a pulse for what people were feeling. And there was a lot of, people operations things that people wanted, right? And they wanted help. They wanted maybe better PTO policy, maybe better benefits package. So, 401k match, we weren't there yet. We are now, but, so I was able to implement a lot of changes that addressed the concerns that our staff are having. But the engagement survey allowed me to be able to say to the exec team, you guys may think that this is a problem, but the problem really is this, and we need to address it quickly in order to retain our talent and to keep them happy. So that was probably my first 60 days was busy, but it went smoothly. Like I said, I'm adaptable. So especially with working for small companies, larger companies, startups, or companies that experience over 700% growth. That was me at my last company. In the time that I was there alone, it was insane. So, you can kind of throw me in there and I'm going to swim right up to shore. It'll be fine.
And that reminded me a little bit of my first 30, 60, 90 days in my chief of staff role. I did a listening tour as well. And
Yes.
a small enough company where it took a while, but I could speak to everyone in the company, which was hugely beneficial. And I remember there were executives, I will not mention names, but who were nervous that I was going to do this because they were planting things in my head and say, it's this way, like look for this. And I was like, all right, I'm going to take that input. But then, like you said, I'm going to speak to the people and say, all right, like I kind of see what you're saying here, but this is actually the root cause, or this is what people are actually concerned with. They don't really have an opinion over here. So it was, I think it's a good suggestion for an incoming chief of staff. If you have the opportunity to do some sort of listening tour or engagement survey, or just get a baseline for people. If you're at a large company, you might not be able to speak with everyone, in which case speak to as many people as you can and get a representative sample set. But that's a huge advantage at the beginning of your tenure, I think.
Yes, it was invaluable. And it was, it really gave me a pulse of what was going on. I mean, luckily we have a beautiful culture here, and, there's no room for egos. Everyone does their job. They do it well, and they teach everyone else, like super collaborative. So the culture here is just wonderful. So I knew I wasn't going to come in and find some,
toxic,
horrible problems that we're experiencing, but typical problems of a small business that has grown, slowly but steadily, and they are conservative. And so they have conservative growth, and they don't spend a ton where they don't need it to. And we don't have these big, fancy, huge office buildings. Don't need them. Everybody's remote, right? So, we do have a small office in Boston, but, it's what we need. It's not this big, they're not spending a ton of money, on things that are unnecessary. So, they really have done a great job at growing the business and building a positive culture and environment. So I knew I wasn't going to find anything that was crazy, but there's always problems. You're not going to be perfect, no matter how hard you try. There's always going to be a problem to solve.
Exactly. And I remember I knew that if I was going to turn over some rocks, a few of the creepy crawly stuff was going to shoot out. And I was like, all right, let me just be ready for this. But it sounds like you have a great culture. So I'm wondering if you were talking to an executive who was at a similar sized company, or a company at a similar stage, and they were considering bringing on a chief of staff, it seems like your path to being chief of staff was pretty smooth. I mean, every company has its challenges, but you were set up well. You were given the authority or influence you needed, and you were able to make an impact right away. So if you were speaking to an executive on how to set up a chief of staff well, what advice would you give?
Yeah. So a couple of different pieces, I think. I think the first thing is that you need to find someone you trust, right? I am very much an advisor as well, right? I give advice. We have ideas, and I'm like, maybe not so much, or that's great. I actually, based on some research studies or whatever, that's actually a great path for us to take. So I give a lot of advice and guidance, right? And help direct us down a straight path as much as possible. So you have to find someone that you trust, that you're willing to give maybe not all the keys, but a key to, and allow them to do their job effectively. I also think that they need to be able to really get a clear understanding for the role. Chief of staff is not going to come on board and be your EA. If you have one, great. So you already know the difference. If you don't, then maybe you should consider what the differences are. Okay. And you need to get everyone on board with the role. One thing that Mark and Ken did when I first started my first week is they sent out an email that explained exactly what I'm going to be doing to the entire company.
Good for them.
Basically my job description in an email, and said, this is what Mel's responsible for. There were no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They knew that this is an executive hire role coming in to help lead our company in the right direction. So that's another point of advice. So two. And then I think my third really would be to find someone who is multidimensional and who is great in a lot of different things, because they exist, right? You're not going to give me your, accounting Excel spreadsheets and think I'm going to be able to give you anything of value in return. However, I'm never claimed that that's my skill set or what I want to do. Like, the thought just creeps me out. But I am great at a lot of different things, and that's okay. And those types of people do exist. If you're looking for a chief of staff, and if you want to hire internally, for example, look at who you have in an operational type role, like operational leadership. Who's your VP of operations? They're probably doing a ton of work in multiple different areas, and they're constantly putting out fires, or they have multiple initiatives going on at the same time, and they're leading a bunch of people in the right direction. Look at them. See if they would be worthy of becoming your chief of staff before you go externally, because they have the institutional knowledge, and institutional knowledge is critical to this type of role. And yeah, I mean, don't be afraid to think outside the box, especially when hiring someone in this position. You can hire someone who may not have had a chief of staff listed on their resume, who would be a perfect fit. Someone who's been able to lead cross-functional teams and initiatives. Those are the types of people that you want to have as a chief of staff, because they can be successful in multiple areas of your business while also being, while also knowing enough to be a little bit dangerous and to give you the advice you need to lead your company.
There's so many chiefs of staff who have a different title, but they're fulfilling the chief of staff role.
Yeah.
So take a look at the work they're doing. So yes.
A head of operations is, if you're looking at the roles and the responsibilities of a chief of staff, you look at a COO, oftentimes it's very similar, right? Or a head of operation. The responsibilities are often similar. So those are my biggest pieces of advice.
Beautiful. How do you work with two principals? So do they always agree, or is there ever a time where, let me see here.
Okay.
Okay.
The good thing is that we all work really well together. And, they're good people and respectful. So that's number one, right? So it's easy in that aspect. No, they don't always agree. Oftentimes I would say that I'm maybe the tiebreaker, right? And if we're still stuck, we'll bring in Jeff, right? If I'm on a call with just working. So often, but they do work well, and we always try to get to a place where we feel good about the decision. So, compromise. I couldn't think of the word. You try to compromise, right? You compromise in so many areas of your life, your work relationships, and those decisions that need to be made there. There's always compromise as well. So, play the role, or the role of referee sometimes, and tiebreaker. But, when in doubt, we try to find a solution that works for everyone.
And as we round out here, what is one of the favorite parts of being chief of staff?
That's a good question. I would say the fact that I get to interact with the entire company on a regular basis. I'm a people person. I'm not shy. I enjoy talking and connecting with people. I love to solve problems. I love to coach. I love to mentor. And I'm able to do that in this role because especially in my company, where I'm almost that person that people go to. If it's something not technical, they're coming to Mel because they need, you know what I mean? They're coming to me. If it's not a technical question as it relates to our project delivery, they're going to ask me. So it's very fulfilling. And I've been able to develop such great relationships with the new folks that I had never met before, and continue those relationships with the people that I worked with previously. So I'd say that that's probably one of my favorite pieces. And that, as I mentioned earlier on our call, I really do enjoy problem solving, and I find myself to work very well under pressure, like almost those types of emergent situations that happen. And you have people that kind of fight or flight. I'm more of the fighter where I can 100% just fight through it and get to the other side. So as a chief of staff, there's always something kind of happening. And, right? There's always something going on because you're in multiple areas of the business. There's never, a boring day. So those things are very, they're very rewarding to me in my position.
Wow. Yes. Yes. I always say chief of staff is many, many things. Boring is not one of them.
No, not one of them. And I think it's not for everyone, right? I also want to, as much as I'm, glorifying it and telling everyone how much I love my job, it isn't for everyone, right?
Sure.
Some people who want to just be focused in one area, or you could be so great at revenue operations. You could be so great at marketing, and that's great. Stick to it. Love it.
People too. Yes.
Right. And those are your skill sets. My skill sets are a little different. And yes, I've been in sales. I started in sales. I spent probably 15 years in sales, tech sales, and I just really great at, but I just wanted to stop selling. I wanted to move into leadership, and that's how my path went. And so, I have a bunch of, superpowers, and I'm not afraid to let anybody know.
I love that. I think you're an executive problem solver. You're getting to utilize all of your talents and skills and resources. Pushes you because you do have to be a creative problem solver. And I love what you said about, when there's a fire, I dive right in. And I remember as chief of staff, when there was a crisis or an escalation, they were, oh no, we have to deal with this. And part of me, like a small part, was like, okay, like let's get this done. This is kind of exciting because I can help.
Right. Because then when it's over, you're like, look at what we did. Look at what we did. And I remember leading my teams, my larger teams, and we'd always have fires to put out, especially when you're a 24/7 business, right? IntelliCare was 24/7. And we get through a crisis or whatever, and I'd be like, look what you guys did. Look at what you did. We're done now. Crisis over, but you guys killed it. So
beautiful. Well, Mel, thank you so much for sharing. It's been an awesome conversation.
Absolutely.
You're welcome back anytime. Yeah, love
you. Thank you so much. I'd love to be back. This has been great. Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.